I manage a surf hire shop in Byron Bay, and last month a guy from California walked in around noon, looked me dead in the eye, and asked where everyone was. I told him right here, serving customers. He got annoyed and said it was lunchtime, so why wasn't the whole town shut down for lunch like civilized countries do? The man genuinely believed the entire world stops operations between 12 and 2 for a mandatory siesta. When I explained we just eat whenever we're hungry, he accused me of contributing to Australia's declining work-life balance. He then asked if I'd ever considered moving to Europe where they respect human dignity. The bloke had been in the country for 6 hours. My cousin works at a Woolworths in Bondi, and she watched an American woman spend 10 minutes in the produce section holding a capsicum like it was radioactive. Finally, the woman approached her and asked, in the most concerned voice possible, if Australia had been hit by some agricultural crisis that mutated their bell peppers. My cousin said no, that's just what they look like. The woman insisted this couldn't be a normal bell pepper because it was too shiny and perfect. She demanded to speak to whoever was in charge of quality control. Apparently, American bell peppers are supposed to be duller, and anything shinier than that must be genetically modified by the government. She left without buying vegetables. I work at a cafe in Melbourne CBD, and an American tourist asked for our free Wi-Fi password. I told him we don't offer free Wi-Fi. He stared at me like I'd announced we don't have oxygen. He said every business in America provides free internet because it's a basic human right like water. Then he asked if Australia was a third world country because that would explain a lot. When I mentioned we charge for Wi-Fi or expect people to use their own data, he said this was exactly why Australia never became a superpower. He proceeded to sit outside with his phone, muttering about infrastructure failure, before finally leaving when he couldn't load his emails. I'm convinced he wrote a terrible review. My brother runs a ticket counter at a cinema in Adelaide, and last week an American family walked up and tried to tip him $15 for printing their tickets. He politely said we don't do tipping here. The father looked confused and asked how else the staff would know they did a good job. My brother said we get paid actual wages. The father insisted that was impossible because without tips, workers have no incentive to provide good service, which is why communist countries always fail. He explained that America invented the concept of good customer service through tipping culture in 1952. When my brother refused the money, the father accused him of being too proud to accept help and told his kids this was why Australians are so poor. They left the cash on the counter anyway, looking offended when my brother put it in the charity box. I work at a roundabout installation just outside Perth, checking traffic flow patterns, and I've watched American drivers approach our roundabouts like they're encountering alien technology. One guy from Texas stopped his car completely before entering an empty roundabout and turned on his hazard light. When I walked over to check if he needed help, he asked me where the stop signs were. I said there aren't any, you just give way to traffic on your right. He told me that was impossible because roundabouts are regulated by stop signs in developed countries. He claimed American traffic engineers invented the four-way stop system specifically to prevent roundabouts, which were banned in the US during the 1960s for causing too many accidents. He insisted I was lying about how roundabouts work because nobody would design something this dangerous. Eventually, he went straight through the center of the roundabout rather than around it, because that made more sense structurally. My sister teaches at a primary school in Hobart, and she had an American exchange teacher join her staff last month. During the first staff meeting, the exchange teacher asked when they recite the Pledge of Allegiance. My sister said we don't do that here. The American woman looked horrified and asked how the children learn patriotism. My sister explained that we teach history and civics instead. The woman said that was insufficient because the Pledge of Allegiance is the cornerstone of childhood development and has been scientifically proven to increase literacy rates by 40%. She claimed that Australia's education ranking would immediately improve if we started each day with a flag ceremony, like countries with proper values do. Then she asked if she could at least put up some Australian flags around her classroom. My sister said sure. The woman bought 37 flags and covered every wall. The kids asked if it was a special holiday. I work security at a shopping center on the Gold Coast, and I had to speak with an American teenager who was walking around barefoot. I told him this was fine, totally allowed. He seemed shocked and asked if there were no health codes in Australia. I said people go barefoot all the time, especially near beaches. He insisted this violated international hygiene standards established by the World Health Organization in 1987. He claimed America had strict footwear laws because going barefoot spreads diseases, which is why you never see barefoot people in American malls. When I explained that Australians just don't think shoes are necessary all the time, he said this explained why Australia has so many dangerous animals, because we've clearly given up on self-preservation as a concept. Then he asked if crocodiles attack barefoot people more often. I told him crocodiles don't come to shopping centers. He said not with that attitude. I'm a pharmacist in Canberra, and an American bloke came in last month asking for his prescription anxiety medication without a prescription. I explained he'd need to see a doctor first. He pulled out his American prescription bottle and said this should work internationally because the FDA is recognized worldwide as the supreme medical authority. When I told him Australian prescriptions require Australian doctors, he accused our healthcare system of being corrupt and protectionist. He claimed that America established universal prescription standards in 1973, and any country not honoring American prescriptions was violating international medical law. Then he said he'd just buy the medication over the counter like you can in Mexico. I explained that's not how it works here either. He asked if Australia was aware that restricting medication access was a human rights violation. I suggested he book a telehealth appointment. He said he shouldn't have to because his American insurance covers the whole planet. I'm a barista at a specialty coffee shop in Sydney, and an American guy ordered an iced coffee last Tuesday. I made him a proper Australian iced coffee with espresso, milk, ice cream, and whipped cream. He stared at it for a solid 30 seconds before asking why there was dessert in his coffee. I explained that's what iced coffee is here. He said no, iced coffee is just cold coffee with ice like every rational country serves. He insisted I had made a milkshake by mistake and demanded I remake it properly. When I showed him the menu with a picture, he claimed Australian cafes were deliberately confusing tourists to overcharge them. He said American coffee culture is the global standard, established by Italian immigrants in 1920, and anything else is just making up words. He asked for a refund, then took 40 photos of the drink to post online as evidence of Australian scam culture. He never actually tasted it. My mate works at a McDonald's in Brisbane, and he had an American customer ask why everything was so expensive. He explained the prices include proper wages, so we don't need to tip. The customer said that couldn't be right because everyone knows McDonald's pays minimum wage globally, which is $7.25 per hour. My mate told him Australian minimum wage is over $20. The American said that was impossible because no economy could sustain those numbers without collapsing into hyperinflation, which is basic economic. He claimed the Australian government must be lying about wages to make the country look better than America, like North Korea does. Then he asked why his meal cost $14 when it should cost $6 like it does in Texas. My mate said that's what things cost when workers are paid fairly. The American insisted this was proof that socialism doesn't work, because he shouldn't have to pay more just because other people want higher wages. He ate his meal while complaining about it the entire time. I run a restaurant in Darwin, and we had an American couple dine with us last month who seemed confused by our service style. After they finished their meal, they sat at the table for 90 minutes waiting for us to bring the check. Finally, the husband came up and asked why we were holding them hostage. I said we're not, they were welcome to leave whenever. He explained that in America, the server brings the check immediately after the meal because restaurants need to turn tables to make money. When I told him we just let people relax and leave when they're ready, he said this business model was financially illiterate and we'd be bankrupt within 6 months. He claimed Australian restaurants must be government subsidized because there's no way we could survive without maximizing table turnover like American establishments do. His wife asked if communism was the reason we let people sit so long. I handed them the bill. They left a $5 tip even though I specifically said we don't tip. They winked at me like they were helping me escape poverty. I work at a Kohl's in Cairns, and an American tourist asked where the Mexican food aisle was. I told him we don't really have a dedicated Mexican section, just some old El Paso products scattered around. He looked devastated and asked how Australians survive without proper Mexican food. I said we have other cuisines. He insisted Mexican food was a dietary staple invented in Texas and adopted worldwide by 1985, so every country should have at least one Mexican aisle per supermarket. He claimed Australia's lack of Mexican food explained our low population because humans need tacos to thrive. When I suggested he try one of our Asian grocery stores for different options, he said that wouldn't work because Asian food isn't nutritionally complete like Mexican food is. Then he asked if Australia had considered importing taco culture to improve our international standing. I told him we're doing fine. He bought a jar of salsa and some corn chips, and told me he'd pray for our nation's recovery from this culinary crisis. I manage a pub in Newcastle, and an American couple walked in during happy hour asking for the kids' menu. I told them we don't really do kids' menus at pubs. The woman looked shocked and asked where Australian families take their children for dinner. I said restaurants, cafes, plenty of places, just not usually pubs. She insisted that American pubs always have kids' menus because family dining was mandated by federal hospitality laws in 1983. Her husband added that excluding children from pubs was discrimination and probably illegal under international family rights conventions. When I explained that Australian pubs are more adult-oriented spaces and families go elsewhere, the woman said this was why Australia has such low birth rates, because we don't make children feel welcome in society. She claims studies show that countries without pub kids menus have worse childhood development outcomes. They ended up ordering fish and chips and splitting it with their 8-year-old, who seemed perfectly fine with the arrangement. Before leaving, they suggested I write to Parliament about adding a kids' menu requirement. I drive a taxi in Melbourne, and I picked up an American tourist who asked why I wasn't driving on the right side of the road. I explained we drive on the left in Australia. He said that was backwards because right-side driving was established as the global standard in 1945 after World War II. When I told him lots of countries drive on the left, he insisted those were just former British colonies that hadn't modernized yet. He claimed left-side driving causes more accidents because it goes against human nature, which is why America forced the rest of the world to switch sides during the automotive revolution. Then he asked if Australia was planning to convert to right-side driving soon, since we're friends with America now. I said no, we're fine as we are. He spent the entire ride gripping the door handle and loudly narrating every turn, convinced we were about to crash because driving on the left defies physics. When we arrived, he said he'd report this safety violation to the American Embassy. I work at a tourism information center in Alice Springs, and an American woman came in asking for directions to Sydney. I told her it's about 3,000 kilometers south. She laughed and said, "No really, how far?" I repeated 3,000 kilometers. She got annoyed and said Australia isn't that big, she'd seen it on maps. When I showed her a scale map of Australia overlaid on the United States, she refused to believe it was accurate. She insisted Australia was smaller than Texas because that's how it looks on world maps, and maps are drawn to scale by international law. She claimed I was trying to scam her into buying an expensive tour package by lying about distances. Then she asked if I could just call her a taxi to Sydney, because it couldn't take more than 2 hours to drive across Australia. I told her it would take at least 33 hours of straight driving. She accused me of making up numbers and said she'd walk if necessary. I haven't seen her since. I think about her sometimes. My cousin manages a bookshop in Fremantle, and she overheard an American teenager ask his parents why everyone in Australia spoke English with an accent. The parents said it was because Australians learned English from British people, so they pronounce things wrong. The teenager asked why Australians haven't fixed their accents yet. The father explained that accent correction costs money, which is why poorer countries still have accents while America has neutral English. The mother added that American English was scientifically proven to be the clearest form of English by Harvard University in 1978, which is why it's used in international business. The teenager asked if Australians feel embarrassed about their accent. The father said probably, but they're too proud to admit it. My cousin was standing 3 feet away, folding books, listening to this entire conversation. When the family noticed her staring, they smiled and waved like nothing had happened. She waved back. I'm a tour guide in Uluru, and I had an American tourist ask me if Aboriginal people were actors hired by the government. I said no, they're Indigenous Australians who've lived here for over 65,000 years. He said that couldn't be right because human civilization only started 6,000 years ago in Mesopotamia, according to his high school history textbook. He claimed Australia was discovered by Captain Cook in 1770, so there couldn't have been people here before that. When I explained Aboriginal history predates European colonization by tens of thousands of years, he said I was confusing mythology with real history. He insisted Aboriginal Australians were actually British colonists who adopted an Aboriginal aesthetic for tourism purposes in the 1950s, similar to how America has historical reenactors. Then he asked how much Aboriginal people get paid to wear traditional clothing. I told him they're not performers. He said that would explain why none of them speak clear English. The man left Australia 2 days later, convinced he'd uncovered a massive historical conspiracy. I work at a train station in Wollongong, and an American businessman asked me why our trains don't have first-class sections. I explained that most Australian trains just have standard seating. He seemed personally offended and said that first-class train travel was invented in America in 1869 and became the global standard for rail transport. When I mentioned we have some premium services on long-distance trains, he said suburban trains should also have class separation because that's how functioning economies work. He claimed that Australia's classless train system was socialist propaganda designed to make everyone equal, which goes against human nature. Then he asked if this was why Australia never developed a proper train network like Japan or Europe. I pointed out that we have a perfectly functional train system. He said functional systems have first-class sections, and without them, successful people have no reason to use public transport. He ended up taking an Uber instead, muttering about how America would never tolerate such egalitarian nonsense. I work at Sydney Airport's information desk, and last week an American man approached me in absolute distress. He said he'd been in Australia for 10 days and couldn't find a single 24-hour Walmart. I told him we don't have Walmart here. He asked what Australians do in emergencies at 3 in the morning. I said we plan ahead or wait until morning. He looked at me with genuine pity and said this was proof that Australia was still a developing nation because access to midnight shopping is the foundation of modern civilization. He claimed America's 24-hour shopping culture had increased GDP by 30% since 1995. Then he asked if I'd ever considered moving to America where I could buy groceries at any hour. I said I was quite happy here. He handed me his business card and told me to call him if I ever wanted to escape. The card said he was a real estate agent from Ohio. I keep it in my wallet as a reminder that confidence and accuracy are not the same thing.